The heat pumps are phenomenal. It is mostly a comfort thing more than a cost savings. Now, if you put in a heat pump system, it's going to be more efficient than your standard air conditioner. So you are saving in the summer as well. The variable speed is just, there's no reason to have a two-stage anymore. Definitely no single-stage systems. But if you're putting in a heat pump or a gas furnace, whatever it is you're doing, it should always be a heat pump, right? And you should never put in an air conditioner, never replace an air conditioner with another one. There's no benefit to it.
Hi, and welcome to the Heat Pump Podcast. I'm Ed Smith.
And I am Eric Fitz. We are co-founders of Amply Energy.
So we are telling the stories of folks who have built successful heat pump-focused businesses. And so we're very lucky today to have Mike Gundersen from the Chicago area join us. Mike, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure. All right, Mike, we're going to get deep into your business and ask a bunch of technical questions. But to start, we just want to get to know you. Tell us the Mike Gundersen story and how you got to where you are running a successful HVAC business.
I guess I'll start just with entering the military. I went into the military right out of high school. I was a crew chief on E3s. Those people will be more familiar maybe with AWACS. If you watch movies, it's not the real AWACS that you see on there. But yeah, E3, I did that for a total of 15 years in the Air Force as a mechanic. I did go to heating and air conditioning school when I was stationed down in Oklahoma and thought I was going to get out and do heating and air conditioning for a company full time. I decided to stay in with military. And so I would change my shift and work the swing or night shift and do heating and air conditioning during the day.
Wait, you'd be a mechanic for the Air Force at night and then
yes, yeah.
And then also do HVAC during the day?
Correct.
For the Air Force too, or that was like...
No, that was a civilian job.
Okay. All right. Hustler. All right. I love it.
You took the easy route, sounds like. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That sounds super easy.
It's actually pretty funny because going to school in Oklahoma, you get to the section for boilers and hydronic heating. They're like, yeah, you're never going to see this. And you skip right past it. And then I decided to move up to the Chicago land area. And there's boilers everywhere. So
how funny.
Yeah. Now that's one of the specialties that is fun. It's fun to get into things that are different. And boilers were definitely that. I remember moving up here, not being from Chicago. It's like, please do not send me into the city and don't put me on boilers. The company that I went to work for, that's what they did for a month straight. I was in Chicago working on boilers every day. It was definitely an interesting time. So back then we didn't have GPS, right? That was 2005. So you had the map books, so it's really thick and you're flipping from one page to another. It's like you're learning what street goes north and south, east and west. When GPS came out, I was like, wow, I have a new best friend.
I remember those. It's like, I got to go from A1 to now D7 because I just got to the edge of A1. Yeah.
Yeah. You find out really quickly the streets that go through every town, right? But some towns you'll go in and a street changes a name just for their town, even the same street, and then restarts again. So, yeah, there was pretty funny. I'd get into the Chicago, Evanston, Skokie area, and I was very, very happy for what I called the streets that were the K streets, right? Like Kedvale, and that all of them were Ks, but you knew they went east and west. So that was north and south. It was nice. Off of Irving Park goes all the way into the city from the suburbs. Start finding those streets that helped out. Now it just doesn't matter. It's been a while.
Well, thank you for your service. And then when you got out, you moved to Chicago, you go work for someone else's HVAC company.
That's correct.
Tell us more.
I went to work for a company up in the Northbrook area, North Shore. So we worked along the lake a lot. Again, a lot of boilers. I was there for about 5 years. I went to work for a company in the city. And after being there for a couple of years, I decided that it was probably better to do our own thing. So my wife and I decided that's what we're going to do. And we started from nothing, really. Went out and bought a truck, a van, and she basically supported everything until we could do it on our own. So with her, she's business management degree and human resources is what she was working in. And prior to the company, prior to us having the HVAC company. So it worked out really well. She's been fantastic. She runs the day to day, so it's pretty nice. I would say the biggest reason for us, starting the business was because there was things that we would like to have done, and when you're working for somebody else, you can't. You just got to do whatever it is their model is. And it wasn't what we were interested in doing.
And so tell us about the model of Compass, like having had that as your reason for starting it. Like, what did you want to do? What type of company did you want to build? And what type of company have you built?
Well, so we started out, we'd like to do things differently. So it was a lot of pride in the way things looked. I was primarily a service technician when we started. Obviously, I did installations when we started the company. It was something that I had to do, but it was about making it look as well as it performed. One of those things that was just, you wanted to be able to show people why your work was different, necessarily because of a brand or anything, but this is what we do to make sure that you're not going to have air sucking in around a filter or noise, just different things that you thought were important to the operation of the system. And a lot of places it has more to do with how many furnaces can you sell? And that wasn't really what we were interested in. It was more the performance of the system and selecting a system to solve problems that customers were having. And so we started out, like I say, it was me in a van. We grew over the years, had some great people with us. We still have, like I say, Scott has been with us. He was the first guy that came on with Beth and I once we started bringing folks in. And he's with us still to this day. So we have a great team in our install department. We have great service technicians, and it's just been a really nice time. Starting with myself, now we're up to what we have 6 vehicles on the road, 10 total employees at this point, and it is definitely going to be growing beyond that here very quickly. So,
congrats. What year did you go out on your own?
It was the end of 2011. Okay. So we incorporated, I believe, January 1st, 2012 is when we did the incorporating.
It's great.
And I'm curious, just given your background, how did you get those first set of customers and kind of get things going initially? What was your approach?
That's funny you ask, actually. So I will say my mother-in-law was a very, very big proponent of the company. She worked at a local hospital. So all of the nurses and people that she would talk to, she would obviously be referring, and she did a great job with that. I had a great neighbor, Fred, who he knew everybody in town that we worked in. And he was leaving my cards with people, talking to people, and it was just a lot of word of mouth. We would do our town we were in Streamwood. They had a summer celebration during the summertime in midsummer. And we would go out there. They would have a tent set up for businesses, and you would talk to people as they walked through. It was mostly getting in front of people and just introducing yourself to folks and making sure they knew that you were doing heating, air conditioning on your own as a business. And that's how we got started. We didn't buy any customer lists. I didn't take over another company. It was all from scratch, 100%.
Amazing.
It was a lot of work, I won't lie. But I do think it was worth it for sure.
Awesome. I can't resist asking this question. I noticed on your company marketing site, there's a special section for Mike's Pepper Garden. Can you just say a little bit more about what that's all about? I love it, by the way. But,
so our marketing company that we work with, he likes to put things out there so people see more than just, hey, the HVAC guy or anything like that. So I started growing hot peppers in 2020 more than a normal, right? So I was growing them well before. I grow them in pots and move them around. And it was an interesting story. So my oldest son graduated high school that year. Very interesting for sure, right? We were to watch his graduation on TV. It ended up being the wrong graduation from a town, I think, in Iowa.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody had been stuck in their house, not really doing anything. And we got all finished, and I had these potted pepper plants sitting in the back corner of the yard. I'm like, I'm not really ready for summer to be over with. And I brought them in the house, put them under a little light that I had actually gotten for seeds and never used. But everyone's trying to find things when you're bored out of your mind, not being able to go and do anything, go anywhere. So I come to realize that you could grow hot peppers throughout the entire winter. I had 3 or 4 rounds of peppers. I kept those plants actually for about 4 years. But long story short, now I grow a lot of peppers. So I think last year I had just over 200 plants that I took out of the basement. I give them to neighbors. Everybody wants some sort of peppers. So
wow.
This year I still do a lot of the pepper, but I have a lot of other things as well. Growing my own vegetables in the basement and everything. So it's all or nothing. That's what my mom always told me, and my wife, she's kind of on that boat as well.
So you're one of the rare houses where you actually use the plant aspect of the manual J, because there's so many.
Right.
It throws off humidity and everything else.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. The whole plant thing is just, I don't want to say it's gotten out of hand, but now I have everything in a tent. And of course, if you have a grow tent, then you get all of the marketing for other types of plants. It actually helped a little bit with some of the problems I had. When you have an indoor plant, you get like edema. It looks like little grainy crystals almost underneath the leaves. And it all has to do with perspiration of the plant. All the water absorbs has to come out somewhere. It's like breathing, right? So one of the things I was like, well, a plant's a plant. So let me read some of these books that they keep sending me in the mail with all these pamphlets and everything, and learned all about vapor pressure deficit and keeping humidity and temperature in line so that the plant can breathe properly. And man, it made a world of difference. So I'm very thankful to those folks that grow that stuff together.
Man,
that's awesome.
They take a lot of pride in their plants as well.
Nice. And you got the building science, plant science synergy going on there too. You're worried about airflow, humidity, temperature, pressure.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And to your point, I do have humidity that we take care of down there as well, because it's constantly circulating air and I'm adding moisture to that area. So yeah, there's a lot to that.
That's great.
Awesome.
So Mike, in what you've built today, so you're mainly focused on residential, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And so there's no average job. Every home is unique. But if I pushed you, what does a typical Compass job look like? Like, what equipment are you guys using? What's the setup?
So our primary brand that we use is Daikin. We've been a Mitsubishi dealer for a very long time, basically since the day one, since we started. Some of the other places that I worked at, I was the heat pump guy or ductless guy, and I really thought they were a great product. Fortunately, Mitsubishi doesn't make gas furnaces, so that was a problem. They did come out with a coil about a year and a half or so ago, finally. But Daikin does make gas furnaces as well, and they have fantastic systems for dual fuel, which is a big part of what we do up here. The all-electric is great. I will say, when I can get into it a little bit later as well, but when it comes to heat pump systems, a lot of people are like, oh, they work. They're rated at 13 below zero. I can tell you firsthand, the Mitsubishi system I had in my last office at 25 below zero, it had no problems keeping up. They're great systems. Daikin, same thing. It's all about selecting the equipment for what it is that the customer expects out of the system. So when we are putting in systems, I do feel sorry for anybody who puts in a straight air conditioner anymore. There's not really a great price difference, especially with rebates if they qualify. I'm probably getting a little ahead of things, but when it comes to designing a system, that's a question that has to be asked. What do you expect the heat pump to do when we're putting one in? Most common, people would say, hey, I want to put in the heat pump and let it run as much as it can. And then if the furnace has to take over, that's fine. Right? So great dual fuel aspect of that. When it comes to dual fuel, I have a dual fuel at my house. It's a Daikin VRV Life system. And the reason for that is I didn't have a heat pump in my house prior. We moved into this house about 6 years ago. It was hot. My bedroom is over the garage. So in the summertime, if it's 70 degrees, it's too hot for Mike. So we looked at the house and my wife's like, yeah, I know we're either going to be putting ductless in here or there's going to be something that takes care of this. Otherwise, I'm going to be in the basement all the time. The VRV Life just worked out for us for many reasons, right? And it comes to designing and knowing what comes in to play. So in this case, there was the existing system had a 3.5 ton air conditioner, but back in the late 80s, a 3.5 ton, even 4 ton air conditioners had a 3/4 inch suction line. Anything now that size, most of the time you're going to look at least 7/8, possibly 1 1/8 inches. It sounds like some of the new refrigerants, it depends on which one you're using. You may wind up using smaller ones again. But aside from that, when I'm looking at that, I said, wow, I got to tear out 40 feet of my basement ceiling to replace a line set. Or if I go with a VRV Life, I can leave that line set, clean it really well, and then just let my system know, like, hey, it's bigger, right? So the VRV Life only needed a 5/8 suction line. So I had to let it know that it's a larger suction line than was necessary. And also the liquid line is not insulated. So it would only run at a capacity that would keep the refrigerant lines from sweating, right? Because normally on a VRV type system, you would insulate both lines. This system allowed me to do that and add a ductless wall unit up in my bedroom off of the same outdoor unit. So we've done many of those systems as well. They're very nice. It's the only system that I can put a gas furnace on a VRV, or most companies it's called VRF. That's the only one that has a gas furnace available to run. Everyone else, their VRF systems are all electric, and that's it. So we went with the VRV Life in our house for that reason, for the little items, smaller line set, I think being the biggest one.
So you start off by saying that you installed Mitsubishi and they perform really well at cold temperatures. It's about selecting the right equipment. Why did you still end up with a dual fuel system? Why not just go all electric? Yeah, what was the...
Yeah, well, so, it's one of those things. When I put my system in, I love the heat pump side of things, especially ductless. But you just don't know. You're going from a big gas furnace in the house and you're like, wow, I ended up putting in a 4-ton VRV systems or full size. You don't have half sizes, right? There is no 3.5 or a 2.5. So I went with the 4-ton and then put my proper size coil on the furnace. And then, of course, it also takes care of the ductless in the room. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think that the heat pump would work as well as it does. So I think I was like, well, I'll have the gas when I need it. The reason we moved into this house was our previous house. We were told by a solar company that they wouldn't put solar on because it was shaded too much of the time. Couldn't remove trees. There wasn't anything that I could do to eliminate that. So my neighbor's trees would have cast too much shadow on the home as well. So at that point, I knew I wasn't going to do anything else to the house because I wanted to have solar and be able to use the heat pump for as much as I wanted to, essentially, right? So the VRV system was designed, you can go -5 before it switches over to gas, and guess it does it. So if I want to set it at -5 or 15 or 20, I can do that, but it'll perform down that low. And then my ductile system off of the same unit will still run. I've had it running there 16 below zero with no issue either, but the gas does switch over at -5, as slow as I can go on that particular system. But that's why I didn't go all electric. I think I might have been saying a little bit earlier, backup heat. A lot of people, because of the ratings you can get out of heat pumps now, you see as low as 22 below. The new refrigerants coming out are going to allow us to go colder than they're currently rated at as well. But backup heat is necessary. It's a heat pump is a mechanical item. Choosing whether you have electric resistive backup heat or gas, that's a personal preference, really. Heat pumps are extremely comfortable, and I think that's the biggest point of them, quite frankly. But when it comes to being a mechanical item, if it breaks in the middle of winter, especially a refrigerant circuit, you can't pull good vacuums when it's cold, right? You can definitely service refrigerant if necessary, but you can't pull a good vacuum, which is extremely important on any refrigeration, whether it's just straight AC or a heat pump, or as I've been talking lately, two-way ACs. Made Adams, I think I would have to give credit for that, because I'm like, how you talk about a heat pump, not confuse people, but he's been talking about two-way AC. And so I've been kind of using that a little on my own here lately, because it's less confusing for people when they can say, oh, so an air conditioner does heating and cooling. Two-way AC definitely describes that. Whereas if you say heat pump, some people don't even know that it does air conditioning. I think it's only for heating. So pretty good on his part. But you have to have the backup heat, because you're going to have to wait until the temperature comes up. And we've been running into a little bit of, when you look at people who do go all electric, it is a little bit of, you run out of power sometimes. And what I mean by that is, if you have a 200 amp panel, great. But if you have two systems and you go all electric, now you're going to have 40 to 60 amps for the backup heat, plus 40, 50 amps for your heat pump. That'll gobble up a lot of what you're allowed to have on a panel like that. So sometimes it does come into, can I do this in my house? Whether you want to have gas or not, you might have to keep it. So dual fuel is good for that as well. Most of the houses we've dealt with going all electric, no issues whatsoever, but you can run into it, especially when you start having two EEB chargers and everything else has been converted to electric. You do have to bring in more power to the house. And ComEd's happy to do it. It's just a matter of being on their schedule when they can run more power to your home.
So for your system, I mean, you've got a balance point set to -5 with a crossover point to -5 degrees. How many hours a year are you actually even running the furnace?
Not very many. I actually use a monitor, an energy monitor. So again, called an Emporia View.
You know it. We know it well.
Yeah, it's great. Yes, I am a little nerdy, I would say, when it comes to these things.
You're in
I
good
can tell
company,
you
Mike.
it takes exactly 2 pennies to cook a box of mac and cheese on the induction stove. So, and there's no mess to clean up, right? So the kids are not catching hand towels on fire or anything like that. So it's nice to have that induction stove. But with the Emporia View, back to that, it's easy to see what kind of energy you're using. And especially, it's very nice when I am talking to a customer who is concerned about the cost of electricity versus running gas. In my experience, I've done the numbers, and I've also ran it physically. So for the second year that we were in this house, I set my heat pump to 50 degrees for a switchover. So I ran my furnace the entire winter just to see, like, what is it going to cost me? This was before I put the Emporia in. What is it going to cost me to run the gas furnace versus what it cost me to run a heat pump? It's almost identical. There's not really savings. When people talk about savings with heat pumps and they're more efficient, they definitely are more efficient. You have a COP of 3, 4. I've seen as much as 5, I want to say. So for every watt that you're spending to run that heat pump, you're getting 5 as far as output is concerned. So they're very efficient as far as that is concerned. Electricity resistive is nearly 100% efficient. It's just expensive to make it. So in that aspect, for us in Northern Illinois, one thing we can say that we have cheap is gas and electricity. It's very cheap. When I say cheap, it's like average about 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Dead of winter, typically, if you look at historically, 68, 69 cents a therm for gas in the winter when it's an actual winter across the country. Right now, last month in December, it was 25 cents a therm for gas. It's 28 cents in January. So if it's severe weather, it might cost a little less to run the gas furnace, right? Especially with those kind of prices. What you won't get out of a gas furnace is the amount of comfort that you get out of a heat pump. So if you think about a furnace, I have the furnace I put in, I know, and it sounds like overkill probably for some, but the main furnace we put in is a modulating furnace. There's not a lot of difference in cost between a 2-stage and a modulating furnace. Now you got rebates and tax credits. So that gobbles up everything, all the difference between those. But we've done the modulating furnace primarily. You can go down to 35% of its capacity all the way to 100. So you're like, wow, that's it's a very comfortable furnace. And it is. But my heat pump, the VRE system goes down to 14% of its capacity. It's barely running. And so if it's maintaining, I've seen it down in the 600 watt range, maintaining the temperature in my house. So very, very comfortable. You're getting the longer run times at a lower heat rate. So it's very quiet. And it's even, right? You have one problem we have around here is the 2-story house with a basement and one air conditioning and heating system. It's like, wow, upstairs is always uncomfortable. Not with a heat pump. It does a tremendous job of evening that out. So the heat pumps are phenomenal. It is mostly a comfort thing more than a cost savings. Now, if you put in a heat pump system, it's going to be more efficient than your standard air conditioner. So you are saving in the summer as well. And that's what even you look at, especially with inverters, which is virtually all we put in. Very seldom do we put something in. I don't know if last year if we put in a system that did not have an inverter compressor. The variable speed is just, there's no reason to have a 2-stage anymore. Definitely no single-stage systems. But if you're putting in a heat pump or a gas furnace, whatever it is you're doing, it should always be a heat pump. Right. And you should never put in an air conditioner, never replace an air conditioner with another one. There's no benefit to it. Everything is expensive anymore. Any system you put in is going to cost you a lot of money. Even a basic system is not cheap. So why waste time when you could spend another couple $1,000s and you can put in a nice system?
Mike, you are hitting so many of our favorite points. Heat pumps work at super cold temperatures. Heat pumps are more comfortable. Heat pumps for cost of installation can be quite competitive. Heat pumps shouldn't be sold on cost savings over the course of the year. That's like really dangerous territory. It's all about understanding the homeowners. These are, anyway, you've just like check.
So our number one system that we put in is the Daikin Fitz system. That is not something you go all electric with. They are designed, I believe, -5 they'll operate down to. But this is where I'm talking about using the heat pump that is designed for what you want out of a system, right? I wanted my system to be able to work all year. If I want to use it, then I want to be able to do that. The Daikin Fitz system, even though it's got a design of -5, it loses capacity well before then, right? So you're not at 100% capacity like mine at 0 degrees outside temperature, my system is giving the full capacity that it's capable of, even at 0. The Daikin Fit is not that way. And we have actually found through the cloud services, and you can see when people's systems switch over, between 24 and 28 degrees is when the average single family home will switch over. We do have the Daikin Fit systems in condominiums and townhouses. They do get down into the single digits and low teens before they'll switch over. So they have the benefit of having people around them. So it does kind of help a little bit. But that's their most popular system. It's a small side discharge unit, very quiet. So it's not very obtrusive. If you're out on your back patio, barbecuing like we like to do at our house, if you have a swimming pool, you just want to enjoy your company, you don't want to listen to the air conditioner turn on, that's something that is very appealing for people. So
that's great.
And remind me that the Daikin Fit, I mean, you talk about something important here of controls are so important for these systems. You've got it, you can set up the Daikin Fit either to choose your crossover point, or you can let the system based on like dwell time. So like if thermostat's calling and it's been 2 hours, let's say, I can't remember the exact setting, then the system's gonna say, hey, you know what? We need to switch over to the auxiliary heat, which is the furnace in this case. Is that right? What's the setup you typically do?
So that is the case. Cool thing with the Daikin thermostat too. So when it first came out, just like any heat pump, you would set, don't operate below this temperature, don't operate above this temperature.
Yep.
You set everything where you want it to switch and minimums and maximums that you wanted the heat pump to run at. And then Daikin came out and they do over-the-air updates through the Daikin One and the One Touch thermostat. Now I can set it and say, you want it to run as much as you can? Let's set it at 20 degrees. I know 24 to 28 is average, but maybe your home is going to be different, right? One home that looks exactly the same as the next door neighbor is not going to operate the same, as silly as it might sound. But I'll set it at 20 degrees and it will do exactly like you said. Is, you know what? It's not keeping up. I'm going to turn a gas furnace on. With a standard heat pump where you have to set those, it is not going to switch over to the gas furnace just because it can't keep up. It's just going to keep going and you're going to say, this thing isn't working, and have to make adjustments to make your set point a little bit higher to switch over to the furnace. But communicating systems like the Daikin Fit allow it to make those decisions on its own and say, hey, it's 20 degrees is what you want. You're going to get 24 because that's when I keep turning on. Your new set point is now 24. You don't have to do anything. It'll do that for you. Now, if you want it to be higher because you want your gas furnace to turn on at 40 degrees for whatever reason, then you could do that as well. But as far as the low set point, it'll change it to say, this is what you're going to be good for. You can also tell it to, hey, I want to be based on comfort, energy savings. It's going to make decisions to help you do that as well, if that's what you choose to do.
It's so great, these systems, particularly the Daikin Fit, to be able to set a goal, something you're trying to achieve, and not have to take all these guesses about what exactly I need to configure the system to achieve those specific goals, so that you don't, like with the traditional system where you're picking that balance point, that crossover temperature, you're just like, I think it's going to be this. But like you said, every home is different. The behavior in the home, the occupants, the orientation of the building. There's so many things that one house built by the same builder next to another could behave differently. And now with these systems, you get the best of both worlds. You get the ability to dial things in if you need to, but also you can kind of maximize cost savings. You can maximize comfort and let it kind of figure itself out. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. They are amazing. There are some inverter systems that are non-communicating, which are good because if somebody already replaced a furnace 2, 3, 4 years ago, whatever, they may not want to buy another new furnace just to get that communicating piece of equipment. But the communication makes a world of difference. When you're looking at inverter systems, they don't dehumidify the same as a standard air conditioner that's running at 100% all the time. So, but with the Daikin Fit, it does a fantastic job with communication of slow the blower wheel down a little bit and be able to dehumidify based on the set point that you have in the thermostat or the humidity you want to be at. It makes a very, very big difference. But I would say very easily that the Daikin Fit is, from what I have seen so far, the best at dehumidification of any of the inverter systems. They're out, so that's definitely a nice point. And because of the communication ability that they have to talk, they all talk through that thermostat, indoor furnace or air handler and your outdoor heat pump communicate, and they take all of their information and combine it and make it what you want, whatever your comfort level is.
How long have you
one
guys
thing I was
been?
mentioning, I mentioned that Emporia view is just an interesting tidbit we had, not this past winter, but the one prior, as an example of being able to show gas usage and that sort. I think I kind of got away from that when I started talking about the Emporia view, but our houses are all pretty similar, all built in the late 80s, early 90s in our neighborhood. That February, so gas prices were very high. Like we started at $1.24 for the entire summer. Like I said earlier, 68, 69 cents in the dead of winter is normal, right? Then you're in the 30s most of the year. We made it down by February. We'd finally gotten down to 84, 80, 87 cents for a therm. So still higher than usual, but not as drastic. But my neighbors in February were all between $350 and $400 to heat their home. Because I could single out my heat pump with that Emporia view, it cost $118 to heat my house with a heat pump. So those are types of things when you're dealing with dual fuel. You can make choices. If you want to use gas as a source because it's cheaper, you can do that. So some people, retirees especially, they want to watch, what is my budget? Well, if you have $1.24 a therm for gas, electricity is probably going to be a better choice. If we, for whatever reason, electric prices go up, maybe they want to switch over like right now, right? I'm not going to get into politics any, but it doesn't matter who's president or who wants to be president. Every 4 years, gas prices are low here. You can look right on the Night Quarters website and it shows you everything. So it's pretty comical, but right now it is very, very low. So
Interesting.
Yeah, that's great too. So you get, with a dual fuel system, you can optimize for comfort. You can also optimize, instead of like for the thermal balance point or this crossover temperature, you can also optimize for the economic balance point. And that can change from year to year. And like you said, the Daikin Fit gives you an option to kind of say, I really want to, here's the information about my utility. Let's dial in how the system's going to operate to make sure I'm keeping.
And that's on you, right? So it's not going to take any information from the utility company, or you're not putting money in like, hey, 13 cents a kilowatt hour or 68 cents for a therm. That's not stuff we can put in. My understanding is that is going to be coming. So that'd be fantastic when it does, because then that'll be a true switch over for economic reasons, if that's what people want to go with.
Nice.
I will say with January, my solar production is not great in January. January and February are the two worst months of the year. It picks up pretty drastically, I will say, when February is over. But we still run our heat pump because it's more comfortable. Again, the comfort is the biggest thing with the heat pump. If it's not astronomically expensive, then there's no reason for us to switch over. And I think most people who have them in there would likely agree. I think just like myself, when it comes to heat pumps, once a person has one in their house, they're never going to not have one again. And there probably will be people who are just like, I don't really need the gas furnace, especially in new construction. If you're in a build, it's not going to be a very significant amount of time that you're running that electric backup heat. So if that's what you want to do, you'd cut a lot of costs out by not having run gas piping in your house or service to it, especially if you're out where people have, for instance, oil. Or in our case, we have propane outside. Believe it or not, we have quite a few. Once you get 15 miles from our shop here in Dundee, and there's a lot of propane houses. Propane is definitely expensive. Well, you wouldn't want to have all of that extra build if you were building a new house out there. You just go with your electric and be able to do it just fine as well.
Mike, a lot of HVAC contractors are a little worried about dual fuel because it's complicated, right? It's different. What is your design and sales process look like in order to spec a home with a dual fuel system and then educate the homeowner? Walk us through that process.
So a couple of things, and it's like this, even if you're doing just a regular air conditioner, right? But air conditioning in general has always been more finicky than a gas furnace. A gas furnace will run at higher temperatures than it should and things like that. And when I say finicky, it's just you have to do it right? And you should be doing your furnaces the correct way and correctly sized and that sort of proper airflow. So you do look at the ductwork, make sure that you have the capacity to move the air. I think one of the big things, and it's all systems, right? So was it 5-6 years ago, as of July 4th, you had to put in, furnaces have to have a DCM style motor, right? So whether it's constant torque or a variable speed, we love variable speed. Like we were talking earlier, it's a communicating unit, so it can change blower speeds for different reasons to manipulate your airflow. But what people don't take into account is if you put in even a constant torque, ECM motors are going to be louder because the old style that most people had, the PSD or permanent split capacitor motors, they don't like static pressure at all. They slow down. So you could have a blower motor that's designed to be 1,075 RPM, and it'll run at 8 to 900 if you have a good duct system, right? That's just in there. And so when you put the variable speed, it's going to move the amount of air you want. If it needs to move, 1,000 CFM, it's going to move 1,000 CFM, even if it has to speed up. So you're going to have more noise either because the blower motor is running at a higher rate, or the volume of air is going to cause more noise because of the friction of the ductwork. So that's something that you have to talk to the homeowner about as well. You can expect that. But most of the time, especially with variable speed equipment, it's not going to be any noisier because it's doing a better job at lower rates. So it's kind of an offset, right? But with that being said, a lot of the equipment, we're looking at the federal tax credits that are currently available, you wind up going to bigger blower motors, right? There's that one problem that's been had with that tax credit is the EER, right? So that's an efficiency that's geared more towards air conditioning. And although we get hot and humid, it's a very short period of time. So I wouldn't say it was a drastic thing. Like when I lived in Oklahoma, you fall asleep to the nice hum of that outside unit, because if it's humming, you're going to get some good rest. But sometimes it's better when you're looking at a system, especially ductwork that is on the smaller side. We're always replacing return drops, right? The minimum I want to see is 10 inches, but we'll go 20 inches wide and lower the static pressure as much as possible. But what people need to consider too, when you're looking at these systems, it's not about getting rebates. We designed the system for the house. And what I mean by that, in order to get the EER, a lot of times, almost all the time, you have to up the size of the blower. So instead of an 80,000 BTU furnace with a 3-ton blower, you're going to put in 80,000 with a 4-ton blower with a larger coil in order to get the efficiency because of that one number, right? The EER. Yep. The SEER2, the HSPF could be exactly the same, but you need that number to get that rebate. Well, you're going to get that $2,000 rebate, and then you're going to spend it on a dehumidifier for your whole house because it's going to be noisier for one, a 4-ton blower, especially on small ductwork, right? So it's going to be noisier. It's not going to be as comfortable, and the dehumidification is going to be less. You're going to run at a lower rate of refrigerant. You're going to have a larger coil. It just doesn't match. So if it's not a good fit, we don't want to say, hey, I'm going to design you a system and get you a rebate. I'm going to let you know that it's available, but I would also let you know what I would do in my house. And in that case, I would do a 3-ton drive and not get my rebate. So that's the big thing, I think, is knowing what it is you're putting in, what's expected, and what is the house capable of. You can change some ductwork. Some things you can't. If you have a 2-story house and your new construction back in the 80s had 5-inch ductwork, you're not going to change all of that to 6-inch to go upstairs. So there's some limitations, but there are little things you can do, like the return drops and adding air from underneath the furnace. Getting as much return as you possibly can is definitely going to be a big consideration. But you can test, right? And that's the biggest thing, is testing for the static pressure. What are you running at? What is your actual airflow in CFM going through the ductwork? Can you handle a heat pump? That's the kinds of things that when you're looking at the system that you're talking to the customer. We don't really offer any air conditioning options anymore. I think some people, when I talk to them about it, they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm not there to make just a sale. I'm there to talk to you about what's going to be better. And there is no scenario that an air conditioner is better than a heat pump.
Love
even
that.
Anymore. It just doesn't make any sense.
Totally. Mike, I can see why you went out on your own. Like, your level of meticulousness and delivering what's right for a homeowner. I mean, I would have been glad for you to work on military aircraft. I would be even more glad to have you work on the mechanical system in my home. Like, I can tell you just take it seriously.
I do. Yeah. And it's fun. I do feel like I'm a little nerdy sometimes, but it does help in being just like with the peppers, right? Once I'm in, I'm all in. So
to that end,
and you can always get better, no matter how well you might think you're doing now. It can be better tomorrow and next year. So
actually, that tees up perfectly. The question we like to end with is, what resources have you used to get smarter, get better over time? Because a lot of our audience are folks who are like just started a heat pump business or about to, or techs who left, like where you were in 2011. You just bought a truck and now it's time to kind of go. So anything, associations, books, podcasts, like where would you point people to get better?
I mean, there's so many different resources, right? So you have ACA that you can get classes through. Gosh, anywhere you can get classes, right? I'm not a big fan of the classes that are necessarily offered at vendors because they're basically there to say, hey, look at this product and sell it. I'm not a fan of those so much, but if you can have actual learning opportunities, I've visited and gone to classes with Mike Capuccio several times, not just once. Every time you go, you learn something new. There are some classes offered through different vendors that are geared towards doing things better, whether you're learning how to do a manual J. You have the National Comfort Institute that has a lot of information in there. And that's just the types of things that I would recommend. I think the biggest thing, you have to be all in on whatever it is you're doing, right? So if you believe in selling heat pumps, it shouldn't be for selling. It should be for helping the customer with what they need, right? I don't want to sell them more than they want or need. I just want them to know what the options are. I'm not going to be the lowest cost guy out there for sure. And sometimes you'll lose a sale, as they would put it. It's not that. It's the customer selected to go with something else for the cost. But there's going to be more costs that they are going to pay by going with the cheaper, lower cost system because there's definite benefits. But I'm not going to say I would put in something else because of being afraid that the customer is going to go with another company. If the company that they're going with believes that air conditioners are good, then that's fine. It'll go that way. But I think once they realize that the heat pump is not going to be that much more, $1,000, that's what, $2 a week if you're financing. It's not a drastic difference. So I think being all in on what is it that you want, what's your model, right? And I was told early on that you can't just keep doing high efficiency. You can't keep doing inverter systems. Well, I can tell you that right now that Daikin Fitz system by itself is 94% of our installation, not just an occasional one. That's 94%. The other stuff we're doing is going to be ductless, whether it's Mitsubishi or we do some of their ducted stuff. I love Mitsubishi's air handler. So nobody make an electric air handler like Mitsubishi does. The thing is, it's awesome. So we'll see what the new ones look like. But that one, machine screws instead of sheet metal screws. It's just very, very well built and designed. So, but I think it's because you're sticking with what it is that you know is right. And that is going to be the biggest thing. Just changing what I'll do because of having some work or something, I don't think it's worth it. And I think it's easy to take that way, but I just don't see it as being beneficial. So you can't believe one thing and do something else.
Totally. Mike, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for all your insights. Really so much fun. Really appreciate you having on this show.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Awesome to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Heat Pump Podcast. It is a production of Amply Energy. And just a reminder that the opinions voiced were those of our guests or us, depending on who was talking. If you like what you've heard and haven't subscribed, please subscribe in your favorite podcast platform. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to reach out. You can reach us once again at hello@amply.energy, no.com, just .energy.